the laughter stopped midair. The lights burned white across the stage of Family Feud. Steve Harvey, halfway through a joke, froze. His smile faltered. The cue card slipped from his hand. "Hold up," he said softly, his voice breaking the noise. Then, to everyone's shock, he stepped off the stage, down the stairs, past the cameras, toward the audience. A little girl in a floral dress was sitting between an elderly couple. Her skin pale, her eyes too tired for her age. Steve knelt beside her chair and said, "You don't gotta play tonight, sweetheart. I'll play for you." The entire studio fell silent. No one knew what had happened, or how the funniest man in television suddenly became the quietest one in the room. It started earlier that morning. Steve arrived early. His staff knew what that meant: another long day of back-to-back tapings, another audience expecting that thunder of laughter and faith. He greeted every crew member by name. "Morning, baby. How you doin', sugar?" His voice always warm. But backstage, one of the producers handed him a note. Scribbled in shaky handwriting, "We're bringing our granddaughter Lily today. She's 12. She's been through a lot. We just want her to laugh one more time. Signed, Evelyn and Charles Henson." Steve tucked the note into his pocket. He'd seen thousands of faces over the years, but something about those words, "one more time," landed heavy. The show began like any other. Two families, bright lights, laughter bursting through every joke. Steve teased a contestant, the audience roared. But between takes, he scanned the crowd and saw them, an elderly couple near the aisle, holding hands. Between them, a frail little girl with a pink scarf around her head. She clapped slowly, smiling bravely. He looked away, but something shifted inside him. This wasn't just another taping. Halfway through a round, the question flashed on the screen: "Name something that makes you laugh even on a bad day." Steve read it, and then paused. He looked toward Lily again. She was whispering something to her grandmother. Evelyn nodded, wiping a tear. He could have ignored it. Kept the rhythm going. That's what a host does. But that day, he didn't. "You know what," he said into the mic, "I think I want to ask somebody else that question." The audience murmured. Camera swung. The producers looked panicked. Steve stepped off the podium. "I'm coming down there." He walked into the audience, microphone still live. Evelyn gasped. Charles tried to stand, but Steve waved him off gently. He crouched beside Lily. "Sweetheart, you got an answer for me?" Lily blinked. "You make me laugh, Mr. Steve." A hush fell. Steve's throat tightened. "I do?" She nodded. "Even when it hurts." Everything, lights, laughter, cameras, froze. He took off his jacket, folded it, and laid it over her lap. "Then tonight," he said, "this show's yours. No music. No cue. Just humanity." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Charles covered his face. Steve looked to the camera. "Sometimes, family ain't just the ones on the board," he said. "It's the ones out here fighting battles we can't even see." He looked back at Lily. "You feelin' strong, baby?" "I'm tired," she said, "but strong." The crowd of 300 was silent. Steve turned to the control room. The producers were frozen. He ignored them. "Roll with me," he said into the mic, "we're doing this different." He invited Lily and her grandparents down to the stage. The audience erupted, applause mixed with sobs. Steve held Lily's hand, helping her onto the bright platform. He told the competing families, "We got new players tonight." No one objected. They just smiled through their tears. They played one round, not for money, not for points, but for laughter. Steve bent the questions toward her. "Name something that makes you brave. Name something that keeps you going." Each time Lily answered, the audience clapped like thunder. When she said, "My grandma's hugs," Evelyn broke down completely. Steve hugged her too, one arm around each generation. After the final question, Steve turned to Lily. "Alright," he said softly, "we usually end this with a fast money round. But tonight, I think you already won." He pulled something from his pocket, the note from that morning. He unfolded it slowly and read aloud, "We just want her to laugh one more time." He looked up, eyes shining. "She did more than laugh," he said. "She reminded all of us why we do this." Then he knelt, handed her the note, and added a small silver keychain shaped like a microphone. "You keep this," he said. "When you get tired, remember, you still got a voice." The studio erupted in applause. People cried, contestants, crew, even camera operators. The blazer and the keychain became symbols of connection. "Everybody stand up," Steve said. The audience rose. The clapping turned to a roar. Evelyn and Charles held Lily between them, both crying and smiling. Steve looked at the camera. "If you ever forget why laughter matters," he said, "remember this little girl." The lights softened. Lily whispered, "You're my hero." Steve shook his head. "No, baby. You're mine." Months later, word spread that Lily had passed peacefully in her sleep. Her grandmother sent a letter to Family Feud. Inside was the keychain, and a photo of Lily holding Steve's blazer. The note read, "She wanted you to have it back, because you already gave her what she needed, hope." Steve kept the keychain in his dressing room mirror. Every morning before filming, he'd touch it lightly and whisper, "Let's make somebody laugh today." He never forgot that night. Afterward, he began ending every show by walking into the audience, finding the quiet stories, shaking hands, listening. The blazer he'd given away was framed and donated to a children's hospital in Atlanta, with a plaque beneath it. "To the ones who still laugh, even when it hurts." That night changed Steve. It reminded him that the greatest leaders aren't the ones who control the stage, but the ones who surrender it to someone who needs it more. So if this story touched you, subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Share and subscribe, make sure this story is never forgotten. Morning after the show aired, Steve Harvey sat alone in his dressing room. The applause still echoed faintly in his mind, but it no longer sounded like noise. It sounded like prayer. He leaned back in the chair, his blazer gone, a soft indentation on the hanger where it used to be. His reflection in the mirror stared back, tired eyes, makeup half worn, but something else too, peace. His phone buzzed. Dozens of messages, from producers, friends, strangers. Words like powerful, unforgettable, I cried. He scrolled, then stopped at one message from a man in Detroit. "My son's in the hospital. We watched your show last night." He laughed for the first time in weeks. "Thank you for showing him he can still smile." Steve put the phone down and rubbed his eyes. "Man," he whispered, "that's bigger than any punchline." He walked back out to the stage, empty now, lights dimmed, silence heavy. The Family Feud board loomed in the background, numbers reset, laughter replaced by the hum of the air conditioning. He stood there for a long time. "I can't just keep doing this the same way," he said out loud, to no one in particular. "If I got this platform, it's gotta mean more." In the following weeks, something shifted behind the scenes. Between tapings, Steve started meeting with families in the waiting lounge, no cameras, no audience. He'd listen to their stories, the dad working 2 jobs to send his kid to college, the mother raising 5 children alone, the veteran learning to smile again. He began calling it the backstage blessing. Sometimes he'd pray with them. Sometimes he'd just listen. Sometimes he'd tell a joke so personal and ridiculous that everyone forgot their pain for a moment. But one afternoon, something different happened. A woman approached him with a small gift bag. She said, "Mr. Harvey, my daughter saw that episode with Lily. She's 9. She started making these for kids in hospitals." Inside the bag were tiny crocheted keychains, each shaped like a microphone. Steve stared at them, speechless. "She calls them laugh keys," the woman added. "Says they unlock smiles." Steve laughed through a lump in his throat. That's good. That's real good. That night, he called his assistant and said, "We're gonna start a fund." Quietly. No press. No spotlight. Just something for the kids who need a laugh key. And so it began. The Laugh Key Initiative, named after Lily's gift, grew silently behind the fame. Every few months, a package would leave the Family Feud offices containing a keychain, a handwritten note from Steve, and a message. You got a voice. You still matter. Keep Logan. Months later, during another live taping, Steve noticed something again in the audience, a man holding up a small microphone keychain, glinting under the studio lights. Steve paused mid-monologue. He smiled. "Ain't that something?" he said quietly. The man mouthed, "Thank you." Steve nodded. He turned back to the crowd. "You never know who's listening, man," he said. "Never know who's watching. That's why you gotta walk with love." The crowd applauded, not realizing they were witnessing a man still healing from a single night months before, a night that rewired his purpose. At home, Steve kept a box in his study. Inside were hundreds of letters, from parents, teachers, kids, soldiers, people who'd seen that episode and found something they didn't expect, faith in people again. One night, his grandson came over and found the box. "What's this, Papa?" he asked. Steve smiled. "Those are little pieces of light, boy." "From your show?" "From people," he said. "The show just helped us see 'em." The boy looked at the letters. "Can I read one?" Steve nodded. The child picked a folded page and read slowly. "Dear Mr. Harvey, I lost my grandmother last month. Watching you with that little girl reminded me of how she made me laugh. I thought I'd never laugh again. Thank you." The boy looked up. "Did you cry when you got this one?" Steve chuckled. "Yeah, I did. Every time." He took a deep breath. "You see, son, people think this job's about jokes. But it's really about heartbeats. If you can make somebody forget their pain for 5 seconds, that's a miracle." One Sunday morning, months later, Steve visited the hospital where his blazer was framed. He stood in the hallway, surrounded by children in wheelchairs, 4 poles, and beeping machines. Nurses whispered, parents smiled shyly. When the kids saw him, they clapped. One girl shouted, "It's the funny man." Steve laughed, kneeling down. "Hey, sugar. You got one of these?" he asked, pulling out a laugh key. She shook her head. He placed it gently in her palm. "Now you do." The little girl stared at the silver microphone, then whispered, "Does it really unlock smiles?" Steve winked. "Try it and find out." Her laughter filled the hallway. He walked further down and stopped at a glass case mounted on the wall. Inside was his old navy blazer, neatly pressed, with a plaque beneath it. "To the ones who still laugh, even when it hurts." Steve touched the glass. "You still here, Lily," he said softly. "Everywhere I go." He stood there for a while, just breathing. When he turned to leave, one of the nurses stopped him. "Mr. Harvey," she said, "that blazer's not just cloth to these kids. It's a story. They call it the armor of laughter." Steve smiled. "Then it's right where it belongs." Driving home that evening, sunset painting the sky in gold and rose, he replayed Lily's voice in his head. "You're my hero." He smiled sadly. "No, baby. You are mine." He thought about how strange life was, how a single moment could reroute everything. He'd spent decades chasing laughter, but that night had taught him something truer. Laughter isn't the opposite of pain. It's the bridge over it. As he pulled into his driveway, he whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for stoppin' my show that night." Because when the show stopped, his purpose began. And that's the story he carried with him from then on, a story not about fame or fortune, but about a blazer, a little girl, and a laugh that never truly ended. Share and subscribe, make sure this story is never forgotten.